The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Welcome to the David Pakman Show. Last week we came to you with the story reported by Glenn Greenwald in The Guardian about a document which said that the NSA is at least through Verizon. It specifically talked about Verizon Wireless, obtaining records of millions of customers, phone records, who called who, without the content, without recordings of those messages, but for people who are not even suspected of having committed any crime, for people who are not under any kind of suspicion at all. The question was, who leaked the documents? Who gave these documents to Glenn Greenwald? And we now know that it is this man, 29-year-old Edward Snowden. Edward Snowden has admitted that he is responsible for what is really one of the most significant leaks in U.S. political history. He is a 29-year-old former technical assistant for the CIA and current employee of the defense contractor Booz Allen Hamilton. He'd been working at the National Security Agency for the last 4 years as an employee of a number of different outside contractors, including Booz Allen and Dell. And just a few days after the initial news broke, The Guardian is revealing his identity at the request of Snowden himself. This is somewhat unusual. Here is part of an interview that Glenn Greenwald did with Edward Snowden. Take a look at this.
My name's Ed Snowden. I'm 29 years old. I work for Booz Allen Hamilton as an infrastructure analyst for NSA in Hawaii.
What are some of the positions that you held previously within the intelligence community?
I've been a systems engineer, systems administrator, senior advisor for the Central Intelligence Agency, solutions consultant, and a telecommunications information systems officer. I think that the public is owed an explanation of the motivations behind the people who make these disclosures that are outside of the democratic model. When you are subverting the power of government, that's a fundamentally dangerous thing to democracy. And if you do that in secret consistently, as the government does when it wants to benefit from a secret action that it took, it'll kind of give its officials a mandate to go, hey, tell the press about this thing and that thing, so the public is on our side. But they rarely, if ever, do that when an abuse occurs. That falls to individual citizens, but they're typically maligned,
And then Snowden talking about what happens now, what happens to him, and he worked for the CIA, NSA. He knows exactly what could happen to him.
Yeah, I could be, rendered by the CIA. I could have people come after me, or any of their third-party partners. They work closely with a number of other nations. Or they could pay off the triads, or any of their agents or assets. We've got a CIA station just up the road in the consulate here in Hong Kong, and I'm sure they're going to be very busy for the next week. And that's a fear I'll live under for the rest of my life, however long that happens to be.
So in a note that went with the first set of documents he provided, he wrote, "I understand that I will be made to suffer for my actions, but I will be satisfied if the federation of secret law, unequal pardon, and irresistible executive powers that rule the world that I love are revealed even for an instant." He has said he doesn't expect to see home again. He doesn't want to live in a society that does these types of things. He believed in President Obama's promises. Presidents openly lie to secure the office, and the government has granted itself power it is not entitled to. There's so much to discuss here, and I want to first just take a step back a little bit, and then we're going to talk more specifically about Edward Snowden. So number one, this is not about whether the NSA obtaining these phone records from millions of Verizon customers who were not under any specific suspicion is legal. The Patriot Act makes this legal. This is really not also about knowing that it's going on. We basically knew this was going on. We certainly knew the capabilities existed for this to go on. We just didn't really know the extent of it. And this is also, it is about whether the law has to be changed and why we should or shouldn't be against this, and whether people will do anything to actually change this law. What about the politicians, as I said last week, who voted for the Patriot Act but are against this type of surveillance? they must bear some responsibility on fixing this, don't they? And will people protest in the streets? This is very different, I think, than Bradley Manning, because number one, it hits much closer to home for a lot of people. And number two, the fact that we have this interview with Edward Snowden already has made him a different type of character that is going to be far more difficult to, he won't be beyond scrutiny, but it will be far more difficult to assail his character. Now, there's been a lot of discussion about Edward Snowden's, the money that he was paid, this $200,000 salary, where he went to college. What about, I don't know that those are really the right things to focus on, right? I think that if we're going to talk about the kind of ancillary outside of the NSA observing, having these records specifically, the question is, what about private contractors' unbridled power? I mean, Edward Snowden says during that interview that he could basically wiretap anybody. He could get phone records for whoever he wanted. He could, if he had the president's private email address, if the president had a private email address, he could read the president's email. So those are really the concerns. We need to put aside a little bit that Edward Snowden made $200,000 a year in his mid-20s. That's not really the issue here. Let's talk specifically about Edward Snowden. I believe that we need to wait and see exactly what Edward Snowden's motives were here. I think that it is perfectly possible and plausible that Edward Snowden had the best of intentions in giving these documents to Glenn Greenwald. I think it is also possible that Edward Snowden had motives we don't yet know about that may have pushed him to contact Glenn Greenwald and to give him these documents. We have a lot of people online all over the place evaluating the character and the motives of someone they had never even heard about until yesterday, June 9th, right? I mean, from the point of view of popular culture or the kind of public record, Edward Snowden did not exist before June 9th. His Wikipedia page was created yesterday, June 9th. We have no idea. I can't believe I sound like Donald Rumsfeld here, but we don't yet know what we don't know about Edward Snowden that may have influenced his actions. Why does this matter? Why does it matter that we are being surveilled in this way, that the NSA is collecting millions of phone records, as Edward Snowden has now revealed by giving these documents to Glenn Greenwald? On Huffington Post, there's a pretty interesting article by Peter Van Buren, and he goes through a lot of the kind of counter arguments people will have about, hey, we shouldn't be worried about this type of surveillance. Let's go through them, and then we can kind of evaluate. You can tell me whether they make sense to you. Number one is that it's legal. As I said, this is legal. The Patriot Act makes this type of surveillance legal. A lot of bad stuff is legal. When talking about gay marriage, we always say, advocates of equality say, discriminating against gay people may be legal, but that doesn't make it right. So simply saying, hey, this is legal and therefore it's not important is not a valid argument. Next argument we hear a lot. Hey, I'm not doing anything wrong. Why should I care? If you're doing nothing wrong, you have nothing to hide. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, the definition of wrong can change very quickly. This is kind of the same argument that's often used. Hey, I'll talk to the police. I really am not guilty of anything. Well, do you know that? Do you know what misdemeanor you might admit to in clearing yourself from the felony that you're being asked about? Who knows? The fact that you've done nothing wrong is not really a good reason to say, read all my email, do whatever you want. The next one is, I trust the government. I trust the government not to do anything that is really going to be bad for the good guys. That's fine that you trust the government overall. That's fine that you believe the government overall exists to serve people, right? I mean, we talk about that all the time. That's kind of, we counter a lot of libertarian arguments by saying things like that. But this is data in the hands of the NSA, who trusted Edward Snowden to be loyal to them, and he wasn't. If the NSA, and this isn't the only argument, but if the NSA couldn't even properly evaluate whether Edward Snowden might eventually, from what their point of view is a betrayal, betray them, why should we trust the NSA with all of the data about who we're calling, emails, who knows what? And that's really the broader point. Even if you believe government overall is not out to make the good guys, make bad things happen to the good guys, the data is in the hands of the TSA, the IRS, the DMV. This data, once the NSA has it, is available everywhere. People in any of those areas could hold grudges, they could be incompetent, etc. And then that really gets us to the main arguments here, which are this type of surveillance is necessary to keep us safe. I am willing to trade some privacy for what is security. Now it gets more complex. The country has survived for a long time without this type of surveillance because the government didn't have the technological means to do this type of surveillance for a long time. Plus, remember, this system just missed the Boston bombers. Monitoring email, we've got a data repository. We have at least Verizon, and we have to assume probably other mobile carriers providing these phone records. And this just missed the Boston bombers who had any number of communications via different means. So is it really effective? And based on that effectiveness, do we believe that it is necessary? That being said, what if it does prevent attacks? What if this type of surveillance does prevent attacks? It's mostly classified. Every once in a while, we hear of such and such plot was foiled, and we kind of hear some dancing around about how the information came to government authorities. We don't really know how many attacks it has prevented, but let's look at some hard facts. 2001 is the year when the United States suffered an unprecedented terrorist attack, right? 9/11, about 3,000 people die from terrorism in the U.S. Let's put it in context. Back in 2001, 71,000 people did die of diabetes. 30,000 people were killed by guns in 2001. 13,000 people were killed in drunk driving accidents. So that's what it looks like at the peak of terrorism. What if we look at a longer period of time, 1999 to 2010? We still have a little over 3,000 people in the United States killed by terrorists. And in that time, and these numbers are incredible, 360,000 were killed by guns. 150,000 were killed in drunk driving accidents. So if we measure this in terms of lives lost during an interval that includes the biggest terrorist attack in American history, the threat posed by guns to American lives was 100 times greater than the threat of terrorism. During that same period, drunk driving threatened our safety 50 times more than terrorism. Is it worth it to lose this much freedom for an issue that comparatively takes a fraction of the lives that guns do? And look at what's going on with guns, ladies and gentlemen. Those are the questions we need to be asking. I am not giving answers because the answer is different for everybody. How much freedom are we willing to lose? Maybe the argument of, I'm not doing anything wrong, so I don't care. Maybe that argument works for you even with the threat that you might inadvertently do something wrong or be revealed doing something wrong, or that the rules may change and something that used to not be wrong becomes a crime. We don't know. We need to evaluate all this, and I'm very curious to hear your thoughts about it. Glenn Beck, of course, was talking about the NSA surveillance program that we learned about, that we now know the documents came from Edward Snowden, former analyst for the NSA. And Glenn Beck, I don't really want to focus on the part where Glenn Beck is talking specifically about Edward Snowden, but he gets into a weird thing where he starts talking about, he's talking about America becoming a totalitarian state and being remembered as the most evil nation in the history of the world, dwarfing what Germany did, so on and so forth. But he makes kind of an interesting comment about Chief Justice John Roberts, and he talks about John Roberts. It's kind of like he says, changing his view on the constitutionality of Obamacare, of the Affordable Care Act. And Glenn Beck suggests maybe he was blackmailed, maybe he was threatened by the Obama administration. Take a look at what Glenn Beck says.
And then you came with blurry red eyes, puffy eyes, as if you had been up all night, or maybe you were crying yourself to sleep, Mr. John Roberts. Did someone approach you with some sort of information? Who are you sleeping with, Mr. Supreme Court Justice? What have you done? I'm sure you're a Supreme Court Justice. You've never done anything wrong. You have nothing to fear. Oh, I didn't even think about that. Oh, but no, that's not what that meant. Oh, I know, but you're coupling that email with this email and that phone call. That's not what that meant. What are you doing? That's not who I am. You're crazy. Really? Are we, Mr. Supreme Court Justice?
Okay, now I want to put aside the kind of absurdity of the IRS stuff that he's talking about and also kind of separate out the NSA stuff and focus on this John Roberts Obamacare vote, because I think there's something really interesting here. Hopefully, I would kind of rank what I hope the reasons are that John Roberts voted the way he did, ruled the way he did on the Affordable Care Act, saying that it is constitutional. The ideal thing would be John Roberts evaluated it fairly, and he knew that the law was constitutional and that the right decision was to say, yeah, this is constitutional. We will say it is upheld. If that's not the case, then hopefully John Roberts voted the way he did because he knew it would be looked back at as the right thing, and it would be that history would kind of vindicate him. It would appear absurd to be against this type of healthcare reform 20 years from now, for example. Then I would say, well, maybe he got paid, right? Maybe he got paid and he said, yeah, it just makes sense that I'm just going to take money and I'm going to do this. And then the absolute last thing for me would be that he was threatened, because if he was threatened, if you are paid by those who are in favor of Obamacare, and this is kind of a weird comparison, I admit, if you were paid by those who are in favor of Obamacare to vote for it, at least those people hopefully have an interest in improving healthcare. However, if you were threatened by those who were for it, that would be a very different scenario, and I guess it would be worse. But again, I don't have any reason to believe, because as you know, Roberts didn't do what a Bush appointee might be expected to do, but that's a good thing. John Roberts did what was legally correct, and we always talk about on this show, really, if you have Supreme Court justices who are simply interpreting the law, and that there is one way to interpret the law, you would always have 9-0 consensus. You don't have that, and it tends to be split among party lines, which means that there is ideology to interpreting the law. I think we should be happy. It should improve our opinion of John Roberts that he ruled, presumably, in a way that he thought was right, and not the way he would be expected to rule because George W. Bush appointed him. It should not make us question whether he was threatened. And, of course, Glenn Beck now, of course, having a conspiracy theory that there are conspiracy theories, that he is a conspiracy theorist. I think we continue to see, as we see him say, was John Roberts threatened to vote for Obamacare? That this is going down that same path that we know Glenn Beck likes to go down. Today's book recommendation, made possible in part by A Fashion of Bastards by Joanna Louise Johnson. It is the best-selling satirical forecast of American politics circa 2015, praised as utterly hilarious, foreboding, and entertaining all at once, written, as I said, by Joanna Louise Johnson. Find it on Amazon.com. This is a kind of a different recommendation for me. This is the book Censored 2013 by Mickey Huff and Andy Lee Roth. This is part of the Project Censored universe. I got to interview Mickey Huff when I was out in Denver at the National Conference for Media Reform a month or two ago. And we talk about a lot of media issues on this show. We talk about false balance. We talk about guest stacking. We talk about reduced range of opinions and debate only being okay in certain ways. All of the important issues we talk about on this show regarding media are analyzed and really gone into depth with in Censored 2013. And if you are looking for, I don't want to say talking points because that has kind of a negative connotation, but if you're interested in having facts and data, which I know a lot of people don't really care about, for discussing the problems with media, if you want to know how to respond when people say, hey, there's a liberal media, the media is just liberal, you should really check out this book. It's just a wealth of information. Censored 2013 by Mickey Huff and Andy Lee Roth. 2 more days on the free t-shirt with membership deal, davidpakman.com/summer13. Check that out. We'll send you a free t-shirt with your new yearly membership. And also we have the Indiegogo campaign going. The Indiegogo campaign, we made a big announcement last week. I don't want to sum it up again, but the David Pakman Show is moving. The David Pakman Show it may be changing, and we absolutely need your support to make it happen. Take a stake in the David Pakman Show. You really get the opportunity to direct where we go, and this Indiegogo campaign is a huge part of that. So check that out. We're going to take a break. We'll be coming back. A lot more to talk about. A lot of people. I got, must have been 30 emails, people wanting me to talk about Alex Jones's appearance on the BBC. We will talk about that and much more. Stay with us.
Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
Welcome back to the show. If you ever use Amazon.com for any shopping, the shopping you're already doing could be supporting the David Pakman Show. It's really easy. You just go to our website, davidpakman.com, click on the Amazon banner on the right side of the website, then just do your shopping. When you check out, Amazon sends us back a commission. Doesn't cost you any extra. You can also become a David Pakman Show member, made possible in part by liberalbias.com. Liberalbias.com shows you how to unskew those uncomfortable facts so they'll fit nicely into your conservative worldview. Learn all of the ways to unskew reality. Visit liberalbias.com. Today's new member of the day, Becky Glynn. Becky, thank you for being a David Pakman Show member. What you are doing to support independent media that doesn't rely on corporate support or oil money or Rupert Murdoch is absolutely important. Find out more, davidpakman.com/membership. All right, let's talk about Alex Jones in the UK. He was on BBC. I must have gotten 30 emails, people linking me to this interview. He appeared on BBC One's Sunday Politics show. And the idea was, let's have Alex Jones on and we'll have another guy on who's kind of against the idea that everything's a conspiracy. And we'll have Alex Jones talk about Bilderberg, this conference which plays host to a lot of powerful people around the world, which Alex Jones has a lot to say about. And they get right into it. Alex Jones gets asked about Bilderberg, and he talks about fluoride.
Alex Jones, you've been covering Bilderberg for a long time. What have you ever found out about it?
In that piece you just played, there's nothing in the water. Hydrofluorosilicic acid in major Harvard studies has been causing a 7-fold increase in bone
What's
cancer.
that got to do with
Boom.
Bilderberg?
What have I discovered about Bilderberg? The
Yeah.
BBC was able to get the documents decades ago that they helped found the Euro, which was actually a Nazi German plan to take over countries economically. No, that's on record.
Then Alex Jones going into a rant about the government disappearing people. He talks about humanity is awakening. He shouts the name of his website. And at the end of the interview, things really just get completely absurd. The host of the show, Neil, who's 64 years old, tells the 39-year-old Alex Jones that he is the worst person he's ever interviewed. And this is what happened.
It's an interesting psychological phenomenon.
Like
Dismiss
Tuskegee,
it.
blackmail and syphilis,
The problem is
Morton
that
down,
conspiracy
nerve gas
theories
trips.
like this are believed in.
Hey, listen, I'm here to warn people. You keep telling me to shut up. This isn't a game. Okay, our government in the U.S. is building FEMA camps. We have an NDAA where they disappear people now. You have this arrest for public safety, life in prison.
You are the worst person I've ever interviewed.
No, it's basically off with their heads, disappear
David,
them,
thank
take
you
them
for
away.
being with us.
Infowars.com.
It's gone,
Liberty
11:30.
is rising.
You're watching the
Liberty
Sunday
is
Politics.
rising.
We have an idiot in the
Freedom will
program
not
today.
Stop. You
Coming
will not
up
stop
in just
freedom.
20 minutes.
You will not stop the Republic. Humanity is awakening. Infowars.com. No. You guys are crazy.
I'll be looking at the week ahead with our political panel.
You're
Until
crazy.
then.
Now, I have to tell you, I was watching this, and it's funny, and it's outrageous, and Alex Jones is crazy, and all this stuff. This interview actually makes me feel more like Alex Jones is just playing a character, and he's not really this crazy. I told this anecdote before, so don't email me saying I told this story. I know I did, but some people may not have heard it. A couple years ago, I was at a talk radio conference in New York City, and Alex Jones was invited to fly up from Austin and deliver some kind of a keynote type speech on, I think it was the last day of the conference. And he was supposed to talk about his multi-platform revenue model and all of this business stuff. And he kind of went into, slowly he shifted from that into the government, this and that, basically just verbatim his conspiracy theories from his show. And it kind of seemed like he was kind of joking in a way. And then right after, I was standing around in a small group with Alex Jones. Must have been Alex Jones, myself, and 2 or 3 other people at the most. And Alex Jones he had already met, he was like friends with the other people in the group. I'd never met him before. And he said, I thought about really freaking him out up there, but I didn't want to go too crazy. And it's really a thing about how he said it than what he said, because he could have said that and been completely wrapped up in what he believed to be true conspiracy theories. The way he said it implied that he knows he's kind of playing a character and he's kind of always tuning that character. And I have to say that for all of the crazy stuff that actually is said on the Alex Jones show, this clip only makes me think that he is playing up his character and maybe is not actually an actual believer in all of the stuff we hear him say. Let me know if you disagree with me, if you think that is not a character, if you think that is completely for real. Tell me. I'm open to the idea. That's not the impression I'm getting from that video. And then the question is, why has he developed this character? And I think we know the answer. This is a very profitable character, if it is indeed a character. The Alex Jones Show does very, very well, employs a number of people. And hey, if it is just a character, is our critique of Alex Jones different than if it is just him saying what he believes? I don't know. What do you think? Last week, we reported on the passing away of New Jersey Democratic Senator Frank Lautenberg. And in the immediate aftermath, it was initially unclear whether New Jersey Republican Governor Chris Christie was going to call a special election or appoint someone and push the election until November of 2014, or whether the election would coincide with his reelection in November 2013. We now know that there will be a special election that will be held in October of 2013. It will not coincide with Chris Christie's reelection, potential reelection day. And we have now, as expected, heard an official announcement from Newark Democratic Mayor Cory Booker, who says, yes, I am running for U.S. Senate. And this is actually kind of interesting because Booker is not coming out of the woodwork. He had already declared that he was interested in running for the Senate in 2014. He was kind of forced into making this announcement earlier than expected when Chris Christie announced that there would be a special election on October 16th. And I don't think this is going to be much of a race. I think that it is the consensus that Cory Booker is a heavy favorite to win in what is a blue state. And it's currently being held by the interim appointee, Jeff Chisa, who is New Jersey's Attorney General and also a Chris Christie ally. There is no expectation that Chisa is going to be actually running for that seat in October. Also running, Congressman Frank Pallone is expected to announce his candidacy. Congressman Rush Holt, also a Democrat, likely to run according to a number of sources. The primary will be August 13. What is the actual upside for Holt and Pallone to run? Is it they believe that even though they have no chance of defeating Cory Booker in a Democratic primary, that simply running may allow them to better position themselves to, I don't know, raise more money in the future, that it could be good for publicity, that it might just get them on the national stage? I mean, we talk about this all the time, but I don't fully get why it's worth it to them to run rather than to just legislate as members of Congress. But that's, I guess, something they have to figure out. Also being discussed here is the cost of this election. The special election was criticized by Democrats and Republicans because it's going to cost $24 million. And that number would have been way lower if it had coincided with the November 5th election, when Chris Christie is facing his own potential defeat in the governor's race. And as we know, that would have hurt Chris Christie's chances because Cory Booker, a popular Democrat running in a blue state, brings out more Democrats to vote. It can only hurt Chris Christie's chances. But the reality is this race was over when Booker filed the paperwork. There might be some interesting stuff that comes out of it. It'll be interesting to see what continues to happen given the newfound friendship between President Obama and Chris Christie. How will that, if at all, be a factor in Cory Booker's campaign? We're going to keep an eye on it and see. Really disturbing story out of Youngstown, Ohio, where we actually have a television affiliate, and we actually have covered quite a few stories out of Youngstown, Ohio on this program. Sergeant Robert Ludwig, 40 years old, was charged a couple of days ago with soliciting sex online of a minor and possessing photos of the naked 14-year-old girl in question. Okay, I tell you that story, you say, yeah, sometimes police mess up and sometimes there's perverts in the police. Fair enough. The problem is I haven't yet told you how this officer came to be in contact with this girl. He was assigned to investigate a rape case involving this girl as a victim. Absolutely disgusting. Ludwig met the 14-year-old girl when he was assigned to the Family Services Unit in the police department, and then he began soliciting the girl online for sex. The victim in the case, this is a quote from Youngstown City prosecutor, the victim in this case is the victim of a rape case wherein he was the detective assigned to that case, and by rights he should have been protecting her, not soliciting as alleged in the complaint. Investigators learned about the incident when the alleged victim filed a complaint in the sheriff's office, and he's being kept in a minimum security in the minimum security portion of the jail where he is, because, as you can imagine, number one, if other inmates know there's a cop in there, that's not going to be good for the cop. And number two, they've made threats against him because child molesters or alleged child molesters don't do well. So they have put him in a different area where there are not it might be counterintuitive. Why is he in the minimum security? Well, the idea is that there's not going to be the types of inmates in that area that would attack him or something like that. Now, some people have emailed me about the story saying, he shouldn't be given special treatment. He should get what any prisoner who is there suspected of this crime would get. I don't know that I agree with that. I mean, to a certain extent, that we have a legal system, and the legal system is what is supposed to provide the punishments. Some people will say, look the other way, who cares? At this point, he is only alleged to have solicited the girl for sex. And also, the prison system should be able to protect inmates. We've talked a lot about prison violence, and although many people don't seem to care, they say if you're in prison, whatever ancillary punishments happen because of violence there are kind of part of the deal. I don't believe that that should be the case. I believe that in addition to not having the death penalty, that inmates should only be subject to the punishment that is actually assigned to them. The fact that the prison systems may have problems where they are not even able to keep violence from happening shouldn't be kind of factored in to what should happen. The other thing is it truly possible that with proper screening, nothing suspicious or odd would have come up about this guy? I understand that it's remotely possible, but this is a truly heinous crime. This is not a burglary of opportunity or taking money to let someone off that in the kind of heat of the moment, maybe the police officer acts in an incorrect way. This is, I've been assigned to protect this girl who is alleged rape. I'm going to try to get her to have sex with me. It is hard to imagine there would have been no red flags of any kind at any point, but that's probably a question that we just really can't answer right now. This is very cool. Last week, we got an email from Bobby Ahern, who is a man, not a woman. For some reason, we thought that Bobby was referred to as a she on the Facebook page. Anyway, Bobby let me know Bobby is a he, who sent in a picture of Bobby runs in the morning while listening to the David Pakman Show in Dublin, Ireland. So I said, hey, send me other pictures of where you listen to the show or whatever's going on. This picture here is from Jonathan Powell, and he listens in Carson National Forest in New Mexico. I don't know if this is his RV or not, but in any case, very cool picture from Jonathan Powell. Also got a picture from Ty Mosley, who listens in Arizona, I guess, while working security, apparently, because he sent us a picture of a security vehicle in a parking lot. So there's Ty Mosley. That's where he listens to the David Pakman Show in Arizona. And then Rob sent me a picture from Rehoboth Beach in Delaware, where he also very early in the morning likes to get out there and listens to the David Pakman Show. So very, very cool. Keep sending these pictures in. You can send them to david@davidpakman.com as an attached file, or just upload them using one of many online photo uploads, Image Shack, or whichever one you like to use, and send them in. These are very cool. We'll keep using them. Today, we will be, hopefully, reaching the $5,000 mark on our Indiegogo fundraiser. Go to our website, davidpakman.com. Click on the blue banner at the top of the page. It takes you to the campaign. Watch the video about what's going on. Read the comments. We've got a bunch of great stuff and awesome, awesome perks. Everything from our custom bumper stickers to T-shirts to, hey, maybe you'll even be able to have dinner with David Pakman Show staff. It probably would be kind of a scary experience. Lewis sometimes makes some weird orders, but kind of a cool thing. So check it out, davidpakman.com. Click on the blue banner at the top of the page. Read all about it. Big stuff going on. We will be back after this. A lot more to talk about, so stay with us. Glad you're here today.
Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
Welcome back to the show. Great to have you with us today. I was reading an article in Mother Jones over the weekend about superfoods, and we've talked about nutrition and foods and big food and all that stuff on the show quite a bit. And this article was different in that it was really talking about something else, which is forget about GMOs and forget about processed foods and all the stuff we know is bad for you. Let's examine whether the superfood claims that exist among foodies and people interested in eating right are really legitimate claims or whether they need further analysis. Now, in the food industry in general, food spending is pretty flat. In other words, it rises with population growth, but if people become more wealthy, they don't buy more food. They just are more selective in what they buy. They may buy more expensive foods, or they may choose to buy only organic, etc. So one way that the food industry responds to this is they come out with these new and improved products all the time. So the idea is get people to buy more expensive products, the products that we produce as opposed to others. And one big trend in this has been the so-called superfoods like acai berries, goji berries, quinoa, chia seeds, all that type of stuff. And the reality is that most of the claims around these aren't false, but they're not really unique. Here's an example. Acai berries, right? The claims about acai berries are true. They have a bunch of phytochemicals. They have a lot of antioxidants. They could potentially prevent brain deterioration or cancer. But the reality is that blueberries, for example, have a lot of the same properties, but blueberries aren't really in or hip right now. Although for a while, blueberries were. Larry King talked about eating blueberries. I remember a big special on nutrition and this whole thing. And the reality is that the things being said about these superfoods aren't false, but they're just not that different than from a lot of other foods. And, quinoa is another good example. It's true. Quinoa delivers a complete protein, all of the amino acids that you can get in one complete package. But rice and beans together actually do the same thing, and they do it even better. And it's way, way cheaper. And then we have to look at the impact that, for example, that quinoa farming has had on where it's native. We have to look at the acai berries and goji berries. We really have to consider that. And where I get to on this is the same every single time, which is there is no magic bullet. More and more, what we seem to learn is a well-balanced diet of real food is what's best. It's not about following individual trends. It's just about avoiding processed food and having a balanced diet. And that really seems to be what makes the most sense. A lot of people emailing in over the weekend saying they want to know what is happening with Lewis's so-called hardcore camping trip. I spoke to Lewis earlier. He'll be back tomorrow. I don't even know how to prepare you. I think you're going to enjoy what you hear about Lewis's camping trip. There were questions about how long Lewis would last out there with his girlfriend and about how much of his supplies would be the appropriate things and would he have too much stuff or not enough stuff and what's going to go on. I think you're really going to like hearing from Lewis tomorrow about what happened. I don't know if you'll be surprised. I don't know if your opinion of Lewis will be improved or if your opinion of Lewis will be damaged by what he's going to tell you about his trip tomorrow. However, let me put it this way. Even I, and I've known Lewis for over 20 years, even I was somewhat surprised at how the camping trip ended up going. So we're going to hear all about it from Lewis tomorrow and hope you will be here for that. DavidPakman.com/membership. Please become a member. We need your support. Non-corporate media is important. We'll be right back after this.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Here's kind of an interesting idea. Every time I go to a restaurant, I get into a discussion with different people about their tipping policy. So what's your tipping policy? Do you always tip 15%? Do you tip 18%? Do you tip over 20%? Does it depend on the service? Do you tip some minimum no matter how bad the service is? There's a restaurant in Midtown Manhattan. It's called Sushi Yasuda, and it has actually banned tips altogether, and it has raised menu prices. And this is in line with the practice that's in some European countries, in some Australian restaurants. And the owner is Scott Rosenberg, and he says, we're going to pay the employees well. They don't need tips. They're not going to be paid their $2 and something an hour subsistence wage and depend on tips. And he says, following the custom, the receipt says when you get the bill, following the custom in Japan, Sushi Yasuda's service staff are fully compensated by their salary. Therefore, gratuities are not accepted. Thank you. And if you try to leave a tip, you're actually told you cannot leave a tip. There's no mechanism to put one in with your credit card. And if you leave cash and there's extra, you're not allowed to leave it, essentially. And this, I had a couple thoughts about this. Maybe this is bad, right? You have no recourse if the service isn't good, except if the service isn't good, the staff member, the waiter or waitress risks getting fired altogether instead of just losing a tip because you're considered a true professional. Maybe we would actually get better service and we would have a better economic situation if wait staff were actually paid real wages instead of depending on tips. The risk for the restaurant is that when you look at the prices, it's taking into consideration the fact that tipping is not allowed, so they're higher. and the prices look quite high, admittedly. I think it would be, I like the idea that you can go to a restaurant, order, have your meal, go through the whole thing without having that last step where you have to look at the check and start figuring out, well, how good was the service, this, that, and the other thing, how much do I tip? But the counter side to that is maybe tipping is, because of the culture in the U.S., it is a way for you to evaluate how the service was, and people might not want to lose that. What do you think about this idea? I don't think it's bad, although I think it'll take some getting used to, and seeing those higher prices on the menu probably is going to dissuade some people. All right, let's go to your voicemails. Our voicemail line is open 24 hours a day. 219-2-DAVID-P is the number. Here is a voicemail about the Boy Scouts not all being anti-gay. Take a listen to this.
Hey, David Pakman. This is Kevin Castaneda from Mesa, Arizona. I just wanted to let everybody know that not everybody that is a member of the Boy Scouts of America is against homosexuality. I'm actually employed by the National Council of the Boy Scouts of America as a sales associate, and I'm actually very, I try to promote the idea of letting homosexuals into the program. I was actually sent an email by my employer saying that as a representative of the Boy Scouts of America, I cannot voice my opinion, and I actually led a rally at my national council, with people who were for letting homosexuals into the program. I actually wanted to give you a website for you to check out. I wanted to study the website so that you're a little bit more informed on the...
All right, so now we're plugging, but the point is well taken. There's something weird about that voicemail that I can't quite figure out what it is, but it's great that you are in favor of allowing homosexuals into the Boy Scouts. Maybe it's something about the language that's being used there that doesn't really strike me as particularly welcoming, but just a first impression. And a voicemail about my interview last week with former Minnesota Governor Jesse Ventura.
Hey, David. This is Vadim in Florida. I just got finished watching your interview with Jesse Ventura, and, I think it's really interesting that he refers to his television series and his touting of 9/11 conspiracy theories and folks like Alex Jones as entertainment, because basically, he accuses both Republicans and Democrats and basically just about all politicians of being extremely deceptive all the time, and I think he actually knows a lot of what he is pushing on those shows is total crap. Otherwise, I don't think he'd call it entertainment, and I think that it actually is pretty destructive. I think it kind of diverts people's attention, and I'd love to know what you guys think about that.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I mean, there's no question that he can't possibly believe every single conspiracy theory is a real conspiracy. It's entertainment, like he said, and there must be some element of him that says, this is what the producers want, that's this episode, I'm going to go along with it. That's it for today. We'll see you tomorrow. We'll hear from Lewis. Hope you remember by then. See you tomorrow.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.